that while you walked, discovered that there was no one true.
Wow, doesn't that ring so true? You discovered that there was no one who would be true. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Old Men in Chairs, and another one of my continuing series of Deciphering Dylan. These are in-depth analysis of certain of Bob Dylan's songs based upon my 60 years of listening to the man, which we'll be celebrating next year. Today I'm going to look at a song. The words were written by Bob during the period when he was living in Catskills and he was holed up with the band, what later became known as the band, in the house of Big Pink, and writing and recording a lot of songs there, some of which later were covered by other artists and became hugely successful. This particular song was actually released by the band in their debut album in 1968, Music from Big Pink. This one was called Tears of Rage. The words were written by Bob. Supposedly he had them all typed out. He handed them to Richard Manuel, who was the bass player and a singer for the band, and said, "Hey, can you find some music to go with this song that I just wrote?" So Manuel is credited with actually writing the music for this song. And he also sang the lead on the song when it was released on the Big Pink album. However, in 1975, the original version with Bob Dylan singing the lead was released on an album called The Basement Tapes. I prefer Bob's singing here, but Richard does sing along on the chorus. It's the high-pitched voice that you hear along with Bob's. And the background music is just amazing. I'll play a little bit of this, not very much, and then I'm going to have a lot to say about it.
Carrying you in our arms on Independence Day, and now you throw us all aside and put us on our way.
Because he's talking about carrying something in his arms, some people interpret this song very literally, and it's about a father's unhappiness with his daughter. Later on, he mentions daughter, that he raised a child and the child went on their way and separated and had nothing to do with the father. I think that's entirely too literal. As I've said before, Bob Dylan is many things. He's a poet, he's a great songwriter, he's a great singer and musician, but most of all, he's a prophet. I feel his lyrics are so timeless that they can really apply to many different situations in many different times. There's something wonderfully vague about the way that he writes. So it's never just about one thing. Now, my personal interpretation of this first line, "We carried you in our arms on Independence Day," to me, that's a reference back to 1776, the first Independence Day, July 4th, 1776, when the Declaration of Independence was written. And when he says, "We carry you in our arms," I think those are the forefathers. Those are the people that wrote the Declaration and fought the Revolution. And they carried in their arms the future of the American people. Now, in the current time, you're throwing it all away. You're throwing away all the rights that were enshrined in the Bill of Rights and all the rules that were set up in the Constitution. Doesn't that sound really, really familiar to how many of us feel after the last 4 years, that so much of the basis of our country has been set aside and freedom of speech, our other freedoms are being constantly infringed? Yes, to me, this song is a perfect match for the history of our country in the last 4 years.
Oh, what did I want? Neath the sun would treat her father so, to wait upon him
think he's talking about a literal daughter, an actual daughter, like my daughter. This is a song about my feelings about my daughter. No, I really feel daughter represents the sons and the daughters of the current time who are not following our constitutional system. Yes, they'll wait upon you hand and foot, like Big Brother. They'll watch everything you do. They'll tell you whether you can go out of your house or not, whether you can go to a park or not, whether you have to wear a mask, whether you have to be vaccinated. But if you want any freedom, they'll always tell you, no, sorry, you can't have your freedom. I know people are going to say that I'm insane for making these connections. I had a similar reaction when I did the review of Clean Cut Kid, which people insist is a song about Vietnam veterans. Well, it is, and it's more. It's a story about overbearing government and propaganda corrupting the minds of young people. And it's not limited to Vietnam. That kind of thing continues to go on, and we've seen a lot of it. Dylan, to me, is an artist who sees things in the broadest possible strokes. You cannot tie him down to any one time or place.
Tears of rage, tears of grief. Why I'm always the one who must be the thief. Come to me now, you know it. Sorrow low, and life is brief.
He's saying tears of rage, tears of grief. Well, that could be the parental feeling that a person might feel about a wayward child, but it's much stronger than that. As unhappy as they might be, do they actually get into a rage at their own children? Sometimes they might. But you're more likely to get in a rage about what's being done to you by your own society. I can say that for the last 4 years, I personally have felt rage and grief over what's been done to us. And I think a lot of people have eventually come to that same position. And I think that's why President Trump won such a resounding victory, because he tapped into that feeling that so many people have, that our government is out of control and is overbearing and is censoring us and controlling us with propaganda. We're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. Rage and grief, yes. And why must we always be the thief? Those who protest, those who resist, those who stood up and said, no, I'm not going to follow your stupid pandemic rules. No, I'm not going to take your poisonous vaccination. We were the ones that were looked down on and almost thought of as criminals, threatened with, we're going to put you in a concentration camp if you won't follow our rules. We were made to look bad, look like a thief. Should we come together because life is brief? Absolutely. That's what we need to do. We need to come together. But I think it's much more than a man talking to his child or a man talking to his lover. I really feel this is a song about society in writ large.
It was all pointed out the way to go, and scratched your name in sand. Oh, you just thought that it was nothing more than a place for you to stand.
By the way, Bob's singing on this is just absolutely incredible. And I know Richard Manuel did a nice job, but for anybody that says that Bob Dylan can't sing, just listen to this song. He puts so much feeling into this song. What does this line mean? It was all pointed out to us the way to go. Way, way back. The guidelines were set in the Constitution adopted in 1789. All the rules of the road, the greatest system of government ever invented. And you just think it's a place to stand. You do not appreciate the great system that was given to you. Therefore, you ignore it, but you ignore it at your peril.
That it was nothing more than a place for you to stand. Now I want you to know that while you walked, discovered that there was no one true.
Wow, doesn't that ring so true? You discovered that there was no one who would be true. Well, maybe not no one, but damn few. you know? In the darkest days of 2020 here in New York with all the regulations put in place, and then the dark days of 2021 when all the mandates for vaccination started being rolled out, and vaccination proof that you need to carry with you to get into this business or that business. It was very, very dark. And how many were willing to stand up and say, wait a second, this is crazy, it's unconstitutional, it's illegal, it's an infringement upon our basic rights, the freedom of the individual to decide about their medical treatment? All of that was just shunted aside, and there was very few who would be true.
Been a place for you to stand. Now I want you to know that while you walk, discovered that there was no one true. That I myself really thought it was just a childish thing to do. Tears of rage, tears of grief. Why am I always the one who must be the thief? Come to me now, you know it so alone. And life is brief.
Now, some people have pointed out that line, life is brief, and thinking that it's a biblical reference. It may be, but I tend to find that those who are deeply Christian tend to find religious references in Bob's work everywhere, and can tie themselves in knots interpreting lyrics where everything that he's writing is somehow related to a Christian message. I don't think that's what's going on here at all. Life is brief. That's not necessarily a religious sentiment. That's just the truth. Life is brief. We only have a limited amount of time, and we've got to make the best we can with it. Time flies. We've all known that. We've been told that all our lives. If you were listening closely to the harmony and the high voice of Richard Manuel in the background there, he's a beautiful singer. But unfortunately, Richard did not have a happy life. He became an alcoholic, and eventually he committed suicide. Rest in peace, Richard Manuel. He had a kind of a tortured life, but he did put all that pathos into his singing, and he did some really, really great work for the band.
So alone, and life is brief. It was all very, very painless when you ran out to receive all that false instruction which we never could believe.
False instruction which we never could believe. Wow. Do I even have to say it? How much false instruction have we received from our medical authorities, from our government authorities in the last 4 years? Way, way too much. Now, I should have mentioned, you're seeing the captions on the screen. I created those. And I think I got them almost 100% right, but I just noticed I had one typo there. When you ran out to receive, not ran up to receive.
That false instruction which we never could believe. And now the heart is filled with gold, as if it was a purse.
That may be the best line in the song. Now the heart is filled with gold as if it was a purse. Wow. That takes in a critique of so much of our modern world, doesn't it? Where money is the only thing that matters. People do not have heart because their heart is filled with gold or the lust for gold. That's not just talking about one person, one daughter. That's talking about the whole world.
Heart is filled with gold, as if it was a purse. But oh, what kind of love is this which goes from bad to worse?
That's the last line of the verse before we get to the final chorus. What kind of love is this that goes from bad to worse? Again, is he talking about one particular love, one particular person that you used to have love with? No, I don't think so. He's talking about in general love that one should have for their neighbor, for their fellow man, for their community, for their country, going from bad to worse. And certainly we've seen a lot of that.
Tears of rage, tears of grief. Why am I always the one who must be the thief? Come to me now, you know we're so alone, and life is green.
And by the way, that is the cover of the Basement Tapes album that came out in 1975. I believe that's Dylan holding what appears to be a mandolin as if it was a violin. And that's Garth Hudson standing behind him. He's the one that's on the organ. I can't recognize all the people. I don't think they're all necessarily musicians. There's a few straight people sitting in there and a dog. That was really a breakthrough album for the band. In addition to some of the songs that Dylan wrote for the Basement Tapes, they had their own songs. After Dylan kind of moved on, the band stayed in the house and worked on some of their own original songs, which make up the bulk of the Big Pink album, including probably their most famous song of all time, The Weight. When that album came out in 1968, it was really one of the most influential albums of the time. I can remember as a college freshman, there were people that were performing The Weight and other songs from that album. I guess you had to be there. If you've been anywhere around the United States of America in the last 4 years, this song should really resonate with you. The general ideas of the abandonment of our fundamental principles and the rage and the grief that many of us have felt for the last 4 years over that. I realize there's a large percentage of people who don't understand how deep that current of rage and grief is, but they're about to find out. I think the people that have been appointed by Mr. Trump to execute his policies in the cabinet and other agencies all share that mission, that things need to be fundamentally torn down and rebuilt along more constitutional lines. So to me, this song is the perfect song leading into that transition. I know there's going to be resistance, not just from the other side of the aisle, but even within our own ranks of Republicans. But those who don't get with the program are going to have a rocky road ahead.